They say death erases the truth, replaces it with stories. Maybe that's why people still whisper our names, nearly a century later, because deep down, they don't want us to be real. They want the poetry, not the pain. The romance, not the rusted-out Ford filled with bullet holes. But we were real. We bled. We ran. We loved. And we lost. Sometimes I wonder what might have been if we'd turned around. If we'd taken the quiet road out of town instead of the one soaked in thunder. If I'd listened to Bonnie when she said, "Let's leave before we're legends." But legends don't get to choose. Bonnie died with her notebook in her lap. I never read that last poem, the one she scribbled just before the bullets came. But I like to think it wasn't about death. I like to think it was about us, two kids from the slums of Texas who wanted more than scraps. They buried her in a white dress. Put me in a suit I never wore. They lined our coffins with flowers and photographs and lies. But we're still here, in the cracks of every outlaw story, in the last stanza of every ballad sung on a dusty porch. This is Clyde Barrow, signing off from the far side of legend. I lived fast. I died young. And I loved one woman until the very end. They called it justice. We called it betrayal. Bonnie and I died in a storm of bullets, side by side just like we promised. But death doesn't end the story, it just hands it to someone else. And they rewrote it fast. The newspapers painted us as monsters. Murderers. A cautionary tale. Photos of our bullet-riddled car were splashed across front pages. Crowds swarmed the funeral homes, clawing to see us, touch us, say they'd been there. Some cried. Most just stared. They buried Bonnie and me miles apart, against her will, against mine. She wanted us side by side in death, like we were in life. But her mother refused. Said she blamed me for everything. Maybe she was right. Henry Methvin walked free. The man who sold us out for a handshake and a promise. He disappeared into the folds of history, never held to account. But I wonder if he ever slept a full night again. As for Frank Hamer, the man who ended us, he got promotions, parades, a hero's legacy. But I saw his eyes that day. I saw the part of him that hated what he had to do. Hamer didn't kill for sport. He killed to stop the myth we'd become. And what a myth it was. They made plays about us. Films. Songs. Lovers who defied the law. Rebels in a world that offered no mercy. They cleaned us up, made us pretty, made our guns shine and our hearts look noble. But the truth was Messier. We didn't want glory. We wanted freedom. We didn't want blood. We wanted breath. But the world wouldn't let us have either. It happened fast, too fast for breath, too loud for thought. We turned onto the rural road near Sales, Louisiana, just past dawn. The sun was low, bleeding gold through the pines. Bonnie was writing something in her notebook, humming under her breath. I remember glancing at her, thinking, she looks peaceful. Like this could have been a Sunday drive. Then I saw the glint. A shimmer in the trees. Instinct screamed too late. My foot hit the brake, but they were already firing. Frank Hamer and his men were waiting in the brush, rifles cocked, fingers ready. No warning. No orders. Just lead. Over 130 rounds in 6 seconds. The windshield exploded first. Then the tires. Then everything. I never got my gun. Bonnie screamed once, sharp, cut short. I reached for her, but the air was full of splinters and smoke. Her body jerked against mine. Blood on her dress. Blood on my hands. I felt something tear inside me, not skin. Not bone. Something deeper. I don't know how long I stayed conscious. Maybe it was seconds. Maybe less. But I remember the silence after, that awful, echoing silence when the last bullet falls and the birds won't sing. Then footsteps. They didn't check if we were alive. They knew. Frank Hamer stood over us, stone-faced. He didn't gloat. Didn't smile. Just looked at us like we were a job finished. A headline fulfilled. I guess we were. They dragged our bodies out of the car, put them on display in Arcadia. People lined up for miles. Some took buttons from Bonnie's dress. Some dipped handkerchiefs in our blood. Souvenirs. America doesn't forget its legends. But it feeds on them first. There's a saying among thieves, it ain't the bullet that kills you. It's the friend who pulls the trigger. We thought we were safe at the Methvin place, a backwoods stretch of pine and swamp in Bienville Parish. Bonnie hated the quiet. Too still, she said. Like a church before a funeral. She was right. Henry had been acting strange, nervous, twitchy, always checking the road. At first I thought it was fear. But now I know better. He wasn't scared for us. He was scared of us. Or maybe of what he'd already done. You see, the law had offered a deal, immunity for Henry if he helped set the trap. All he had to do was leave us exposed, tip off Hamer and the posse, show them the road we'd be on, and make sure we drove into it blind. He agreed. And he never said a word. The night before it happened, Bonnie and I sat under a cypress tree, fireflies dancing like sparks in the dark. She leaned into me, humming some half-forgotten lullaby. Her skin was warm, her breath steady. For a moment, it felt like the world had stopped chasing us. She looked up at me and said, "Promise me, Clyde. If they come, we don't run. We ride straight into it. I promise." The next morning, Henry asked us for a ride to see his father. Said he'd be waiting by the road. He wasn't. But the posse was. We never saw him. Not up close. But we felt him. Frank Hamer, a name that carried the weight of death. They said he brought down more men than illness and hunger combined. Former Texas Ranger, a lawman so cold, even the desert backed away. The government gave him one job, and us. He didn't chase like the others. He tracked. Patient. Precise. He didn't knock on doors. He listened to rumors, followed whispers. The kind of hunter who waited for his prey to bleed out before stepping forward. Bonnie sensed it first. "He's not coming with a badge," she said one night by the riverbank. "He's coming with a coffin." I laughed, but not because it was funny. Because she wasn't wrong. My chest ached with a tightness I couldn't name. Like something inside me already knew the ending. We kept moving, little towns across Louisiana, never staying more than a night. We robbed a bank in Bienville Parish, not for money, but for fuel and food. We were tired. Sloppy. Every job risked more than it earned. One afternoon, we met a man named Henry Methvin. He was young, desperate, and just foolish enough to ride with us. His family had land nearby, and he promised us shelter. Bonnie didn't trust him, but I did. Or maybe I was just too tired to care. We hid out in his father's cabin for days. Bonnie's leg was healing, but she walked with a limp now. The pain changed her. Made her quieter. She still wrote in her notebook, still dreamed of escape. But her poems got darker. They said we'd be legends. They forgot legends die young. One night she looked at me and said, "If we go down, Clyde, let's go down side by side. No surrender. No begging." I nodded. Because that was always the plan. Even if the road ahead was soaked in blood. We didn't sleep for 3 days after the ambush. The woods near Dexter, Arkansas, swallowed us whole, thick with pines, buzzing with insects, damp with July heat. Bonnie limped beside me, face pale, lips cracked. Her leg was bleeding again. I tore my shirt and wrapped it tight around the wound, but we both knew it needed stitches. "There's no hospitals for people like us," she whispered. We moved at night, drank from creeks, and ate whatever we could steal from barns and porches. We were ghosts now. No more cabins, no more camps. Just running. Always running. And Buck. I don't know if he died in that cabin or later in custody, but I never saw him again. My brother. My blood. Gone because I pulled him into this life. Blanche was captured, screaming his name. I still hear it sometimes in the wind. Every headline told a different story. Clyde Barrow, cop killer. Bonnie Parker, Devil in a dress. They said we'd killed 10 men. Some of them weren't even ours. But truth didn't matter anymore, only myth. Bonnie tried to hide her pain, but at night she shook. I held her tight, whispering promises I couldn't keep. One more job, I'd say. One big score, then we vanish. But we both knew better. We hijacked a farm truck outside of Mina. The old man driving it was terrified, but Bonnie smiled, helped him down gently, even left a few dollars in his pocket. We're not monsters, she told him. Just tired. That truck took us across the border into Louisiana, her home state. She said the swamps made her feel safe, like the land itself would protect her. I didn't argue. Truth is, I'd follow her anywhere. But by then, I could feel the noose tightening. Too many eyes. Too many guns waiting in the dark. And somewhere out there, Frank Hamer, the Texas Ranger they sent to hunt us, was closing in. He wasn't like the others. He wouldn't make the mistake of trying to bring us in alive. We crossed the Red River at midnight, a stolen Plymouth rumbling beneath us like thunder. The air was thick with smoke and regret. I kept thinking about that teller's eyes right before I pulled the trigger. He couldn't have been older than me. Bonnie didn't say much that night. She just leaned her head against the window, watching the moonlight flicker through the trees. She wasn't crying. Bonnie didn't cry. But her silence was louder than a gunshot. By sunrise, we were deep into Arkansas. Buck and Blanche were holed up in a cabin near Mount Ida, and we planned to lay low for a while. But nothing about us ever stayed quiet for long. The papers called us a roving death storm. Said we'd killed 6, robbed 20, and burned bridges behind us. Most of it wasn't true, not yet, but the legend was growing faster than the bodies. The cabin was peaceful. Too peaceful. Buck tried to convince me we should skip town, go west, maybe even disappear into Mexico. He wasn't wrong. But Bonnie and I knew better. You think they'll stop looking for us at the border? She said. We're not ghosts. We're fire. Fire doesn't hide. She wrote a new poem that night, called The Trail's End. I didn't read it, but I saw the way she folded it, kissed the paper, and slipped it into her purse. Like she was sealing a goodbye. A few days later, everything fell apart. A group of local deputies spotted our car at the edge of town. They didn't approach. They brought backup. When the shooting started, it was like the trees themselves exploded. I remember glass shattering, bullets like hail, and Buck screaming through a mouthful of blood. Blanche was hit. Bonnie too, a deep cut along her leg from the car door as I dragged her out. We made it to the woods, crawling through the brush like wounded animals. We left Buck behind. He was already dying. It was the first time I saw fear in Bonnie's eyes. The photos were everywhere. Bonnie, in a beret with a cigar in her teeth, grinning like the queen of hell. Me, leaning against a car, shotgun cradled like a baby. To the newspapers, we were the new American nightmare. But to the people, the ones who'd lost jobs, homes, and dignity, we were something else. Hope. Some folks even left pies on doorsteps for us, like we were hungry ghosts. Others sent letters, begging us to rob their banks so they could skip their mortgage payments. One woman wrote, "If you're gonna shoot, shoot the ones who took my farm." Bonnie laughed when she read that. "They think we're something bigger, Clyde," she said. "But we're just trying not to drown." Still, fame has a price. And it collects fast. We couldn't buy gas without suspicion. Couldn't sleep in motels without using fake names. Every lawman with a badge and a grudge wanted to be the one to take us down. I started keeping my hand on my gun even when I was asleep. Bonnie didn't complain. She never did. Even when her feet were swollen from hours in the car. Even when the food ran low. Even when I got shot, a graze to the shoulder during a job gone wrong in Oklahoma. She patched me up herself, teeth clenched, hands steady. "Tell me again," she whispered as she tied the bandage, "how this ends." I looked her in the eye. Fast and loud. Just how we like it. We were 23 and 21. Still kids, really? But the fire in us had burned away anything soft. The world didn't give second chances. We didn't ask for one. The next job was supposed to be clean, a quick hit on a small bank in Lancaster. But one of the tellers reached for a pistol under the counter. I pulled the trigger before I even thought about it. First man I ever killed. Bonnie saw it in my face. "You did what you had to," she said, pulling me into the car. "We're not heroes, Clyde. We're survivors." I believed her. But I still see that man in my dreams, every night since. By the fall of 31, we were ghosts on the backroads of Texas, never in one town long enough to get recognized, but always long enough to make the papers. Every diner radio was whispering our names like some kind of outlaw gospel. The newspapers made us out to be folk heroes. Some called us rebels. Others said killers. Maybe both were true. What they didn't print was the fear, the clench in your gut when you're riding in a stolen car with a sawed-off under your seat, waiting for sirens. The way Bonnie would hum an old lullaby just to calm herself down. Or the way I'd check the rearview mirror every 5 seconds, convinced we were being followed. We weren't just running from the law, we were running from poverty, from the shame of being nobodies in a world built for the rich. The Great Depression took everything. All we did was take it back. Still, we had rules. No shooting unless it was us or them. No hurting civilians. And no jobs in the same place twice. That changed in Joplin, Missouri. We were laying low in a rented apartment over a garage, Bonnie, me, my brother Buck, and his wife Blanche. For a week, it felt like normal. We played cards, drank bootleg whiskey, danced to the radio. Bonnie even wrote poetry. She had a notebook she carried everywhere. In it were verses about love and death, written like a woman who already knew her ending. Then one morning, while we were eating eggs and planning a small-town bank job, the cops came. Not a raid. A war. They weren't expecting us to be armed. We weren't expecting them to come in swinging. Bullets tore through the walls like fire through paper. Bonnie grabbed her purse, not for lipstick, but the Colt .38 she always kept inside. Buck shouted something I'll never forget. "No going back now!" He was right. We shot our way out, tires screaming as we tore down the road, leaving behind dead officers, blood on the pavement, and a camera they would later find, with rolls of film inside. Photos of us smiling. Playing with guns. Kissing. Those pictures made us famous. But they also made us targets. There was no going back now. They say the Texas sun makes men mad. I don't know if that's true, but I do know this: it burned the fear out of me. The first time I saw her, I wasn't looking for a partner in crime. I wasn't even looking for a partner. I just wanted a sandwich and maybe a nap. I was hiding out in West Dallas, fresh off a jailbreak that went sideways. My ribs were bruised, my pride worse. And then, there she was. Bonnie Elizabeth Parker. Barefoot, holding a book in one hand, a cigarette in the other. Her eyes held fire, not fear. She smiled at me like she already knew how this story would end, and liked it that way. "You're trouble," she said before I said a word. I laughed. Takes one to know one. By the end of that week, she was riding shotgun in a stolen Ford, her curls bouncing with every bump on the dusty road. We didn't start with blood. No, first, it was gas stations, corner stores, the kinds of places no one really missed. We never shot unless we had to. Back then, we still thought we were Robin Hood and Maid Marian, stealing from the greedy, giving to ourselves, and running like hell. But it doesn't stay that simple. Not for long. Our first job together was a pharmacy on the edge of town. We needed money. She needed codeine, old war wounds from her leg. I needed her to believe in me. So I handed her a revolver, kissed her cheek, and said, "Let's be legends." We weren't cold-blooded yet. But the world doesn't give warm-hearted criminals a second chance. That night, we counted out $86 and 2 wedding rings someone left in the till. Bonnie tried one on, held up her hand to the moonlight, and said, "Looks like it fits." And that was the moment I knew I'd never leave her side. even if it meant dying with her.